Now we're going to talk about variables. I'm going to introduce a very simple variable. I'm going to show you how it works, what variables are, and how they can benefit us, and things like that. So variables, let's talk about what they are. For a start, we have a sample application here. It just says hello world to a black window, and that's all it does, as you can see right there. So now I'm going to introduce what's called a variable, and I'm going to talk about how they can help us. So let's just introduce a variable. I can talk about this in a second. So I'm going to call it test. We're going to give it a value of hello world. I'm just going to put the variable name here. So let's talk about this and what this does. So what I'm doing here, I'm initializing what's called a variable. Now this is the variable, it's called test. So this is the name of our variable. Now this variable can be called anything you want. It could be called ham sandwich. It really doesn't matter. But the point is you need to give it a name where it makes sense to you. You can refer to it. Because when you have a software application that has thousands of variables, you're going to get very confused if you call them all different types of sandwiches or random names like test or something like that. So it needs to make sense to you. So I'm just going to call it hello world. So that's the name of our variable. This is the value of our variable. So this is what we're putting inside our variable here. Now this part here is what's called a type. Now this is a string variable. What a string variable is, it's a container for words, sentences. You can put a whole book in here if you would like. So it's all alphanumeric, so letters and numbers, but as a string. It's not numbers by themselves, it's not a decimal value, it's not a date or a time or anything complicated like that. So that's what a string is, and that's what's called a variable type. So that's the variable type. That's saying, hey computer, we want to start a new variable and put it into memory. The name of our variable is this. The equals sign is how we initialize it, like give it a value. And when you're working with strings, we always put the value in double quotes like so. And inside the double quotes is the value for our variable. And we always end every line with a semicolon. So now our variable is called hello world. Let's run the program. And you can see it outputs hello world to the window. It is exactly the same as it did before. And that's to be expected because we haven't changed anything. We've just declared and initialized a variable and we're outputting it to the black window like before. So exactly the same thing we're doing here. One thing real quick with variable names, what I always do is use title case, always with a lower character at the start. Now this is up to you, but generally this is how people tend to use variables, and maybe when you work in a company in the future, if that's what you want to do, other people will do a similar thing. So it's good to introduce good practices now. So that's the only reason I do that. Then every next word, so hello world, this will have uppercase. And if we have another word here, then that one will start with uppercase. So that's just what's called standards. It's optional. So let's talk about what declaration is and what initialization is. So to cover those two terms, I'm going to expand on our little example here. I'm now going to put how are you? Like that. And then I'm going to re-output the variable to the screen. And then I'm going to run the application so you can see what is going on. So you can see here in the window, it says, hello world, how are you? So let's have a look at how that works. So you can see here, we've defined our variable, we've given it a type. Now we only give the variable a type once. We're saying, oh, hey computer, this is our variable I want to use, this is our new variable. By the way, it's a string variable. Now we've done that one time, we no longer need to tell the computer it's a string. The computer already knows and it remembers this. So now every time we modify our variable, give it a new value, we're just going to overwrite what is already in there. So when this line comes along, this part will be replaced with how are you, and then we're putting it back out here. So we don't have to declare and initialize our variable on one line. So let's take a look at this example here. So I could equally do this. And the same thing will happen. So what I'm doing here, I'm declaring our variable. And declaring means, hey computer, I want to create a new variable. I know it's going to be a string, but I don't know what the value is going to be yet. Maybe I'll decide at a later time. At a later time, okay, I've decided what the value will be. It's going to be hello world. Then I want to output it to the screen, and then I'm reinitializing it here and outputting it to the screen. So this is declaration or declaring a variable, and this is initialization or assignment. There's some words you're going to hear in the future if you continue to program with C#. So you can see we're doing this on 2 lines, and the output is exactly the same as before, which is to be expected. And one last thing, if we declare a variable here and we attempt to output it without initializing it or assigning it, then it's going to throw an error. We can see this red squiggly line, and when we hover our mouse over the red line, we have a little bit of a clue as to what the problem is, and it's just saying use of unassigned variable hello world. So it's telling us what the problem is, and anytime we have an error, we can't run the program because we always need to fix these errors. So that is a very basic view on how variables work in C#.